It's time for the Wrestling Observer Extra. With Dave Meltzer, right here on The Law, live audio wrestling.
And let's go, my now smoking with the best.
Well, I tell you, Mouth, it worked so well last week, so I'm going to do it again this week.
Okay.
We're going to talk to Dave now for a good, 15 minutes.
Yep.
But if you wish to play Title Boat Trivia...
Yes. Call now.
1-855-591-6876. Chris is on the other side of the board tonight. No John, so Chris will get your calls lined up for Title Boat Trivia. Yes, indeed, it is a T-shirt from barbershopwindow.com or Pro Wrestling Tees that you can win. So call now, and we'll have you lined up for next segment. But first things first here. Dave Meltzer is on the line, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, fresh off watching tonight's UFC event.
Yes.
We have not watched it yet. All I've heard is it was a good card. There were lots of finishes. But, Dave, bigger news in UFCville, especially in Canada, is the re-signing of Georges St-Pierre. This is signed, sealed, delivered, a done deal now?
Evidently, it's a done deal. That's what Dana White said during the week. We certainly heard that they were, they finally got the deal done after probably too much time. It would have been
way
a lot
too
better
much time.
had they got it done last year.
Yeah. Have you heard any of the particulars, Dave, like the sponsorship problems? You know, because George was always upset about the Reebok setup, you know?
I do not know as a fact. I know that like a week ago when it was like coming close, that it was that I think that they were going to work out like some sort of a compromise with him in the sense of he may be able to keep the Under Armour, but there's some, I'm not exactly sure how it's all going to work out. But it was, that was one of the stumbling blocks for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in an era now where McGregor seems to be off doing his own thing, and along with that, Rousey is no longer she's with the organization, but probably won't fight again. John Jones can't draw. GSP is extremely important to UFC, and I can see why they went back and signed him. As far as when he'll be stepping into the octagon, third quarter is what we're hearing. Are we looking at the big July show, Dave?
I heard third quarter, yeah. July, I know from what I understand, nobody knows for sure. I mean, the July show does make sense. I mean, that's the big third quarter show. It's just a question of when he thinks he'll be ready. I think that would be, International Fight Week. I think that would be the show that they would want him on. That makes the most sense.
Going for the middleweight title versus Michael Bisping?
Yeah.
That's the match that I'm hearing. It's like not signed, sealed, and delivered, but that... It's certainly the match Michael Bisping wants. I think it's the match that George wants as well. And I can see it. It's a good, intriguing money match. So the only problem is that middleweight division has got
killers,
Jacare and Yoel Romero, who really are both overdue for championship fights, and this will move that back another 4, 5, 6 months.
And do you think we'll get to see it in Canada as well, Dave? Because you know what he's meant to Canada, right?
You mean as far as like to have the show in Canada? I mean, if it's the July show, it's going to be in Vegas. If it's not, if it's not going to be Vegas, it should be Toronto.
Because to me, I think it should be here. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think that they would. The last show in Toronto did really, really well. So. I think that it would probably sell out in Toronto, so I think that's a good place for it.
Obviously, the dream fight here would be Conor McGregor and Georges St-Pierre, and this would do it would break every record once again.
Yeah, that would be the biggest show in history.
So, Conor McGregor, what is happening here?
Yeah, what's going on?
This is ridiculous.
Well, I think from his standpoint, if he can get something going with Mayweather, that's the most money that he could ever make. Mm-hmm. So I think that's probably what he's pursuing. I mean, that's a weird fight. I mean, if I'm UFC, there's a part of you that's like, okay, we want to promote this giant show that does 2+ million buys. But on the flip side, do we want, our top guy to the general public, to just, basically be, made to look really bad because in a straight boxing match, I mean, it's just not a match that makes any sense from a UFC standpoint other than the money.
Could GSP be used as a bargaining chip here for Conor McGregor? Meaning that
the thing is, even with as big as the GSP McGregor fight would be, it's still not going to be the money of a Mayweather fight. So it's like with McGregor, I think that he's really going to push for that one if he can get it. I mean, obviously, if he can't get it, GSP is the best fight for him. Plus, the thing with GSP and him is that from a McGregor standpoint, GSP is a no-lose fight that he might win just because he's been fighting consistently and GSP hasn't been fighting in 3 years. I mean, he does have a chance, although, one would think that the size difference would work in GSP's favor, and GSP, obviously a super skilled fighter. But with Mayweather, you're not even your own sport.
Yeah.
But that's the one thing is that if McGregor were to go in there and beat GSP, then he could be, people would talk of him as doing the unbelievable. But if he loses, hey, look, he's still lightweight champion. And I don't think he loses anything losing to GSP because of the size difference.
And plus, with him fighting against Mayweather, I mean, could that even honestly, seriously happen? Like, wouldn't the commission have something to say? UFC have something to say?
I don't know because, if you look logically, a commission should never sanction that fight because it's an 0-0 guy against a 49-0 guy. I mean, just that on the surface.
Right.
But Randy Couture got sanctioned to fight James Toney, who was 0-0 in MMA, and Randy Couture is a 5-time world champion. So it's like... money talks.
Yeah, it's an interesting problem for sure.
Let's talk about another controversial fighter, and that being, Christiane Cyborg Justino. So USADA has announced that they have granted her a retroactive TUE, so a therapeutic use exemption for a banned substance. What does this mean for Cyborg? She is totally not in trouble anymore? She's completely fine?
She's ready to fight whenever she wants to fight, and she feels that she can make the weight. So I'm expecting Cyborg and Germaine de Randamie, whenever Cyborg's ready. I mean, if she's going to be ready in 3 months, 4 months, then it'll be 3 or 4 months. If it's going to take 9 months, then Germaine will probably fight Holly Holm again. That's the way, But I don't know that people really want to see that fight again, but that's probably the one that there's no other fight to make.
So Cyborg was using spironolactone or spironolactone.
Spironolactone.
There you go. Tough word to say.
Yeah.
Why did she need this? Due to previous weight-cutting incidents?
Yeah, due to health issues with the previous weight cutting. What she took is a legitimate medical use for what she had. The problem was that she didn't declare it on her form, and she didn't ask for a TUE. And, I think you could kind of use a doctor to say, hey, it was an emergency. Due to her health, we didn't have time to ask for a TUE, and that's okay. But not telling them that, not filling it on your form, I think that one is the one I can't really rationalize, and that's why, again, I just couldn't see less than 9 months for this one. And instead they, just let her off completely.
Wow.
That's very strange.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that too.
Now, more controversy in the division created for Cyborg is the fact that Holly Holm has filed an appeal over her loss to de Randamie this past weekend at UFC 208 in Brooklyn. What are the ramifications of this? Could this completely be null and void due to the strikes after the whistle?
Man, I don't know, because, have we ever had a decision overturned other than one where it was like a foul that caused, like a clear-cut foul that caused the finish?
This was a pretty clear-cut. This didn't cause the finish, but it was 2 fouls.
But it was in the second round, and then again it was in the third round.
Yeah.
But it didn't cause a finish.
No.
And it was bad officiating, but I don't,
Should they strip her of the title, Dave?
Randamie?
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. Realistically, when you look back at that fight, I think that probably the fair decision was that it be. I think Holm. I had Holm winning 3 rounds, but even if she only won 2 rounds, there absolutely should have been a penalty point called. So then you've got a draw situation. But the fight's over, and again, it's very rare that you overturn a decision. There's only been a handful of them, and never because the referee didn't dock a point, even though very clearly he should have docked a point and maybe 2.
Yeah, I'd say one for each one.
There's no argument that it was bad officiating in that fight.
More UFC news this week in regards to a man who, appears more in the WWE.
Yes.
That is Brock Lesnar, who has retired from mixed martial arts. Do you believe that this is it for Brock in UFC?
I thought it was years ago when he came back, so I don't really want to say definitive because it's like there's so much money involved. And he only has 1 year left on his WWE contract, although he seems to be doing a lot more pro wrestling. And he's at 41. I'm not sure that fighting is the smartest thing. But, it was overturned, But he did beat Mark Hunt, who's not a slouch. You know, he went in there with all those years off and did pretty well for himself. So I don't know. I mean, it's like, I think that if he wanted to fight this year, he wouldn't have done this, because this pretty much freezes his suspension and limits him coming back. But to say that, you know, in a year, I mean, who knows? I mean, you know, maybe somebody offers him a fight with Fedor. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, but then again, I mean, Fedor's with Bellator, and he's with UFC. So, but you know, maybe there's a scenario that works for him, and he'll fight again.
Now, Dave, just to be clear, so if he did come back, though, would he have to live out the rest of the suspension?
Yes, as soon as he says that he's got 5 months left on his suspension.
Okay.
So for him to go, okay, I want to come back, he has to basically announce he's coming out of retirement and open himself for drug testing. And then he'll have to serve 5 more months of his suspension. His suspension's frozen. And he'll have to be drug tested that whole 5 months and continue to pass tests during those 5 months.
So it seems like a lot to have to put up with to come back to fight again.
I don't know about that, because when you do come out of retirement, you have to wait 4 months anyway. You're supposed to wait 4 months for pre-testing, correct, Dave? So this almost
now,
times
so
out.
It won't be another 4 months. It will only be the 5.
Exactly.
It won't
I
be 9
see.
months.
This is almost suspicious to me in regards to a future plan, because Brock does not want to sit around and be tested all the time. Let's also consider, guys, that we're in WrestleMania season. He's going to want to look good.
That's true.
For WrestleMania.
That's
season.
very true.
Having said that, and I don't disagree with you at all, and it's the first thing that came in my head and everyone's head. Remember what he looked like at Royal Rumble? And that was with testing. Now, believe me, I am certain that the reason he retired was to get a drug testing. I mean, if not, he would have just stopped at anything.
Right.
But the thing is, the fact that it took him so long to get out of the drug testing pool tells me that, you know, really up until whatever it was 2 weeks ago, he was planning on fighting. And I don't know what the thing is other than, it's probably a hassle to be tested, but, you know, he was up there for being tested. He was tested for, several months, since July. He's been tested since July. So you know, it had to be a decision that he just made. You know, I mean, it was 7 months of, you know, anytime, 6 a.m., whatever, they could come and test him. And you know, he didn't quit until just, you know, whatever it was 2 weeks ago.
Dave, we're just going to flip over to wrestling for 2 questions before we say goodnight. Number one, Emma. Very strange debut.
Yeah.
The story was she did not take well to the character that they were hoping for, and they're just going to reverse it now?
Yeah, they've been. I guess the reason for the delay was that they were not happy with their mind of what the character is and how she did the character, so they gave her more time, and then I guess
she couldn't do it.
Last week, since it'd been like whatever it was, 5 months. 6 months, they just said, well, we're going to ditch the character. So now I guess she's just going to be back to Emma that she was before after all that, which is, you know. That's one of the all-time greats, I have to say, as far as like.
Well, I still think Glacier holds the record though for most months of a push before he made an appearance. That's for sure. They must have pushed him for like a year before
but
we
at
saw
least
him.
Glacier stuck with the gimmick. She's dropping the whole gimmick.
Not for long. Glacier didn't last for long.
Yeah, but I mean the thing with Glacier is Glacier was pretty much of a flop. You know, when all was said and done with that gimmick too.
Exactly.
But it reminds me of like, you know, bringing somebody in and then they just do so bad on the first match and then you never see them
That's
again.
That's it.
That's pretty rare.
Final question, Dave. There was a blurred referee on Impact this week. Why was the blur?
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, so referee was Marty Elias, who's under contract to Lucha Underground, and Lucha Underground sent threatening, you know, letters to everyone, Pop TV, TNA, and the funny part is like, you know, when they were filming the thing, they were so careful because there's a bunch of those guys like Pentagon and Phoenix and all them that are under contract to Lucha Underground, so they wouldn't let them anywhere near that match. Mm-hmm. But nobody thought about the referee, and you know, and I guess I can see that. I mean, I wouldn't think about the referee either.
Yeah,
the referee had a signed Lucha Underground contract. I mean, if they would thought about it, they'd have put another referee in. That's not that hard to do, but they didn't think about it, and so. You know, that's what the first time in history I think they've ever done that one.
Is that why they never showed the whole match as well, or was there a reason they just showed us highlights?
I don't think that was. I mean, it may have been a reason they cut some of the scenes, but it was always supposed to be. it was always supposed to be a package where they would show some match highlights, but it was also about the Hardys walking around Tijuana and the whole story. I mean, so it was pretty much. I mean, I think that the whole thing had been shot and put together, maybe a week or two ago, and then they went in and digitized the ref. So I don't think that had anything to do with the way the piece was edited.
Okay.
All right, Dave. Well, we have to say goodbye this week. Of course, I'm guessing in the Observer, George the Animal Steel, Koloff, Nicole Bass.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I'll have room for everything. I mean,
double issue.
I'm definitely going to have probably two of the three, and then a third one next week, and another Chavo Guerrero story coming up after that.
Great.
So I got a lot of stories coming up. Yeah,
great. I look forward to it.
That is, we look forward to reading that and talking to you next week at this same time, Dave. Thanks much.
Okay, have a great week.
You too. Dave Meltzer, WrestlingObserver.com, of course. Find it. He'll have detailed stories on a lot of what we talked about earlier in the show, but more in depth.
And when legends pass, he does amazing bios on these guys. You got to check him out.